Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's story. In this episode, Jack and Tu Tien take an important step toward their future. Not with vows or a wedding ceremony yet, but through something just as meaningful, their wedding photo shoot. What begins as a simple session in front of the camera slowly turns into a quiet journey of reflection, where emotions surface, promises take shape, and their relationship feels more real than ever. As they look at each captured moment, Jack and Tu Tien start to understand that marriage isn't only about a big day, but about trust, presence, and choosing each other in the smallest moments. Stay with us until the end to feel the calm. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Your support truly means the world to us. Twilight settles gently over the city, the sky fading from pale gold to soft lavender as Jack slows the car at a red light. He glances sideways at Tu Tien, who is sitting in the passenger seat, carefully holding a garment bag on her lap, like it's something fragile and priceless. Inside is her wedding dress, the one she tried on 3 times before finally nodding and whispering, "This is it." Tonight isn't the wedding yet. It's just the pre-wedding photo shoot. But somehow, it already feels monumental. "Are you nervous?" Jack asks, trying to sound casual, even though his hands tighten slightly around the steering wheel. Tu Tien smiles, then exhales. "A little. I've never done anything like this before. Standing in front of a camera, pretending not to notice it." She laughs softly. "What if I don't know how to pose?" Jack chuckles. "That's what the photographer is for. I'll probably be worse than you. If I look stiff, just step on my foot." The studio is tucked away at the end of a quiet street. Warm lights glowing through the large glass windows. Inside, everything smells faintly of flowers and coffee. Dresses hang neatly along one wall, white and ivory blending like clouds. A rack of suits waits on the other side, perfectly pressed. The photographer, a woman with an easy smile and quick movements, greets them like old friends. "You must be Jack and Tu Tien," she says brightly. "We'll start with some indoor shots first, then move outside when the light gets softer." As Tu Tien is guided toward the changing room, Jack is left alone for a moment. He looks around, suddenly aware of his heartbeat. On a nearby table are photo albums from previous shoots. Couples laughing, couples crying, couples holding each other like the rest of the world doesn't exist. Jack flips one open, his fingers pausing on an image of a groom pressing his forehead against the bride's. "Is that how we'll look?" he wonders. "Hey!" Jack looks up. Tu Tien is standing there, and for a second, he forgets to breathe. She's wearing a simple white dress, nothing overly dramatic, but it fits her perfectly. The fabric catches the light softly, and her hair falls loose over her shoulders. She looks real, like herself, just quieter somehow, calmer. Jack clears his throat. "You look really beautiful." Tu Tien blushes, her fingers unconsciously tightening around the skirt. "You're not allowed to say that yet. Save it for when the camera's rolling." He grins. "I don't think I can." They step into the studio space together, and almost immediately, Jack feels awkward. The photographer positions them near a plain backdrop, asking them to stand close, then closer. Jack's shoulder brushes Tu Tien's arm, and the contact sends a strange mix of comfort and nerves through him. "Don't think of this as posing," the photographer says gently. "Just think of it as being together." Easier said than done, Jack thinks. "Okay, Jack," she continues. "Put one hand in your pocket." Tu Tien turns slightly toward him. The camera clicks. "Now look at each other." Jack turns his head. Tu Tien meets his eyes, and suddenly the noise of the studio fades. He notices the tiny mole near her eyebrow, the way her lips curve when she's trying not to smile too wide. He remembers mornings in the garden, late dinners, quiet arguments that ended in apologies whispered into the dark. The camera clicks again. "That's good," the photographer says. "Hold that." After a few minutes, the stiffness begins to melt away. They laugh when Jack forgets where to put his hands. Tu Tien relaxes when the photographer shows her a preview on the screen. "See?" the photographer says. "You don't need to try so hard. The connection is already there." They change outfits. Jack into a dark suit. Tu Tien into another dress, this one with a longer train. As the stylists adjust the fabric and fix small details, Jack watches Tu Tien through the mirror. She catches his gaze and raises an eyebrow. "What?" she asks. "Nothing," he replies. "Just thinking that this feels unreal." She nods slowly. "I feel that too, like we're stepping into something bigger than us." When they move outside, the air is cooler. The sky has deepened into shades of blue, and small lights along the street flicker on. The photographer leads them to a narrow alley with old brick walls and trailing vines, the perfect contrast to the white dress. "Jack, stand behind her," she instructs. "Wrap your arms around her waist." Jack does as told, his hands resting gently at Tu Tien's sides. She leans back into him without thinking, her head tilting slightly toward his shoulder. The closeness feels natural, instinctive. "You can whisper something to her," the photographer suggests. "Something only she needs to hear." Jack hesitates. Then he leans closer and murmurs, "No matter how nervous you feel, I'm right here. I always will be." Tu Tien's breath catches just a little. She doesn't turn around, but her hand reaches back, finding his. The camera clicks rapidly. Between shots, they sit on a small bench to rest. Tu Tien pulls her coat tighter around herself, and Jack immediately shifts closer, offering his arm. "Are you cold?" he asks. "A bit," she admits. "But it's okay." Jack looks at her, then at the photographer adjusting her equipment nearby. "Do you ever think," he begins slowly, "that these photos aren't just for memories? That they're proof that we made it here?" Tu Tien considers this. "Yes," she says softly, "and maybe also a promise that even if things get hard later, we can look back and remember why we chose each other." The final shots are taken under the glow of streetlights. There's no directing this time. The photographer simply lets them walk slowly, fingers intertwined, talking quietly about nothing in particular. What they'll eat later, whether they should print the photos large or small, who will cry first when they see the album. When the photographer finally lowers her camera, she smiles with satisfaction. "That's enough for today. You two did great." As they walk back to the car, Tu Tien leans her head against Jack's shoulder, exhausted but peaceful. Jack unlocks the door, carefully helping her inside before walking around to his side. The engine hums softly as they pull away, the studio lights disappearing behind them. Jack glances at Tu Tien again, still wearing traces of makeup, eyes half closed. "Hey," he says quietly. "Thank you for today." She opens her eyes and smiles. "Thank you too. It makes everything feel more real." The road ahead stretches into the night, calm and steady, as if gently carrying them toward the next chapter, one frame at a time. Morning arrives quietly, filtered through thin curtains that soften the sunlight into pale gold. Jack wakes before the alarm, not because he has to, but because his mind is already moving. The images from yesterday keep returning. Tu Tien standing under the streetlights, the weight of her hand in his, the feeling that something invisible but important had shifted between them. He turns his head slightly and sees her still asleep. One arm loosely wrapped around the edge of the blanket, her breathing calm and even. For a moment, he simply watches. There's a strange comfort in knowing that soon, moments like this won't just be routine, they'll be permanent. Not borrowed time, not a pause between busy days, but a shared life. Tu Tien stirs and opens her eyes slowly. "Why are you staring at me?" she asks, voice still thick with sleep. Jack smiles. "I was thinking, yesterday felt different." She props herself up on one elbow. "Different how?" "Like we crossed an invisible line," he says after a brief pause. "Not just engaged anymore, more real." Tu Tien considers his words, then nods. "I felt that too. When the camera wasn't there anymore, I realized I wasn't nervous at all. I was just with you." They don't rush the morning. Jack makes tea, Tu Tien prepares a simple breakfast, and they sit together at the small table near the window. Outside, the city wakes up gradually. Vendors setting up, distant motorbikes passing, a normal day beginning. Inside, the mood feels quieter, almost reflective. As they eat, Tu Tien scrolls through her phone, then looks up. The photographer messaged again. She said the preview photos are ready earlier than expected. Jack raises an eyebrow. "Already?" "She said she worked late last night." Tu Tien replies, "She wants us to come by this afternoon." There's a brief silence, followed by a shared smile. Anticipation hums softly between them. The hours that follow move unevenly. Jack goes to work, but finds it hard to concentrate. He answers emails, attends meetings, yet his thoughts drift back to the studio, to the quiet confidence in Tu Tien's eyes yesterday. For the first time in a long while, work feels secondary, not unimportant, just not everything. Tu Tien stays home, tidying up, watering plants, doing small tasks that normally bring her peace. Today, though, her mind wanders. She wonders what she'll see in those photos. Will she recognize herself? Will she see the parts of her she rarely notices? The way she leans in when listening, the hesitation before a smile. By late afternoon, they meet again, walking side by side into the studio. The space feels familiar now, less intimidating. The photographer greets them warmly and gestures toward a large screen. "I'll show you a full sequence," she says. "Not just the best shots. I want you to see the story." The lights dim slightly as the first image appears. It's an unguarded moment. Tu Tien adjusting Jack's collar, her expression focused, Jack watching her with a softness that surprises even him. Then another image fades in. Them laughing, shoulders brushing, eyes bright. The photos move slowly, one after another, like pages turning. Tu Tien's fingers curl instinctively around Jack's sleeve. She doesn't say anything, but her eyes shine. Jack swallows. "I didn't know you looked at me like that," he murmurs. Tu Tien finally speaks, her voice quiet. "I didn't know either." The photographer lets the images continue, only occasionally pointing out details. The way light falls, the natural symmetry of their movements. But mostly, she stays silent, allowing the couple to absorb what they're seeing. When the screen goes dark, Tu Tien exhales, as if she's been holding her breath the entire time. "It feels strange," she says slowly, "like watching our future from the outside." Jack nods. But it doesn't feel forced. It feels honest. They discuss edits and layouts, but the technical details fade into the background. What lingers is the emotional weight of the images. The photographer suggests a simple album design, something timeless rather than trendy. "This kind of connection doesn't need decoration," she says. "It speaks for itself." As they leave the studio, the sky is heavy with clouds, hinting at rain. The air is cooler, and Tu Tien instinctively pulls her coat tighter. Jack notices immediately and drapes his scarf around her shoulders without a word. "Thank you," she says softly. They decide to walk for a bit instead of heading straight home. The streets are busy, people moving with purpose, unaware that for Jack and Tu Tien, something has quietly settled into place. They stop at a small cafe, choosing a corner table by the window. While waiting for their drinks, Tu Tien stares out at the street, then turns back to Jack. "Do you ever worry," she asks carefully, "that once the wedding is over, things will feel empty?" Jack thinks for a moment. "I used to," he admits. "But now, I think the wedding is just one chapter, not the climax." She smiles faintly. "That's good, because I don't want our best days to be behind us." "They won't be," Jack says firmly. "They'll just look different." Their drinks arrive, steam rising between them. They talk about small plans. Where to display the photos, whether to gift one to Jack's mother, how to keep the original safe. But beneath the surface, a deeper conversation unfolds. One about responsibility, partnership, and the quiet promise to keep growing together. That evening, back at home, they sit on the floor, backs against the couch, scrolling through the photos again on a laptop. This time, they take their time, pausing on each image. Tu Tien laughs softly at one, where Jack's expression is unexpectedly serious. "You look like you're making a life decision right there." Jack chuckles. "Maybe I was." Another photo makes them both quiet. A simple shot of them standing side by side, not touching, yet clearly connected. "This one feels calm," Tu Tien says, "like nothing needs to be proven." Jack nods. "That's how I want our life to feel." As the night deepens, Tu Tien carefully closes the laptop. She stands, stretches, and walks to the closet, gently rehanging the garment bag. Her movements are slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Jack watches her, leaning against the doorway. "Yesterday, I thought the photos were just memories," he says. "Now, I think they're reminders of who we are when we're at our best." Tu Tien turns to him. "Then let's promise to come back to them whenever we forget." He steps forward, resting his forehead against hers. Deal. They turn off the lights together, the room settling into darkness. Outside, rain finally begins to fall, tapping softly against the windows. Inside, the quiet feels complete, not empty. The wedding day will come with noise and celebration, with eyes watching and voices cheering. But tonight belongs only to them, a quiet confirmation that the path ahead, though unknown, is one they're ready to walk together, steady and unafraid.